Born on May 24, 1819, Victoria faced strict upbringing from an early age, which was crucial for the future of the British monarchy. Her father died when she was only 8 months old, leaving the family in debt. Victoria was raised under the strict supervision of her mother and her advisor, Sir John Conroy. From the age of 4, Victoria began her education under Reverend George Davis, who nurtured her talents. She studied French, German, Italian, and Latin, and took lessons in singing and drawing. Victoria's childhood was strict and regimented by her mother and John Conroy, preparing her for her future role as queen. Her mother, the Duchess of Kent, relied on Conroy, an ambitious man who sought to control the throne. He hoped that Victoria would ascend to the throne before her 18th birthday, so her mother could act as regent. Conroy created strict rules, known as the Kensington System, which kept Victoria isolated. She was not allowed her own bedroom and slept in a small bed in her mother's room. Victoria couldn't descend stairs without assistance, significantly limiting her freedom. Despite these restrictions, Victoria found some joys in her childhood. She loved drawing, writing stories, and sewing clothes for her dolls. She kept a diary and wrote over 60 million words throughout her life. Her loyal companion was a spaniel named Dash. When Victoria ascended to the throne in 1837 at the age of 18, her youth and energy were welcomed as a symbol of a new era. Her first decision as queen was to move her bed out of her mother's room, symbolizing her break from her mother and Conroy's control. On the day she ascended to the throne, Victoria appeared in public alone for the first time and received positive acclaim. She moved to Buckingham Palace and distanced herself from her mother, housing her in another part of the palace. Conroy was dismissed, while her beloved governess, Baroness Letson, remained as her companion. Victoria became the embodiment of Britain and its progress. Before her reign in 1837, goods and people traveled by stagecoach at a speed of 12 kilometers per hour. By the 1850s, with the development of railroads, speeds increased to 80 kilometers per hour. Britain's population grew rapidly, from 11 million at the start of the 19th century to 37 million by the end of Victoria's reign in 1901. People migrated to cities and worked in factories, leading to urbanization and improved city infrastructure, such as sidewalks, street lighting, water supply, and gas for cooking. Social reforms also transformed Britain. Education became more accessible. In the 1870s, compulsory schooling for children aged 5 to 10 was introduced, and by 1900, 90% of children attended school. However, despite progress, Victorian Britain faced challenges, including poverty, crime, pollution, prostitution, and destitution. In 1839, Victoria decided to marry her cousin, Prince Albert, whom she'd known since childhood. Despite their love, her decision was driven by the need for support in state affairs and a desire to strengthen her popularity. The wedding took place on February 10, 1840. Victoria chose a white wedding dress, a bold and unusual choice at the time. The color white symbolized purity and innocence, and Victoria intentionally used it to emphasize marriage as a sacred union. Since then, the white wedding dress has become a traditional bridal garment, spreading its influence worldwide. Victoria and Albert's marriage became a true love story. They worked side by side, and Albert gradually took on the role of her personal secretary. The couple had 9 children, despite Victoria's difficult pregnancies. She disliked breastfeeding and advocated for the use of chloroform during childbirth, which drew criticism from the church. Together, they popularized the celebration of Christmas with decorated trees and family gatherings. However, alongside personal happiness came hidden tragedy. Queen Victoria was a carrier of the hemophilia gene, a condition known as the royal disease. Hemophilia, discovered in her children, was passed down through the female line. Women could be carriers and transmit the disease, while men inheriting the mutated gene would develop it. Hemophilia causes blood clotting problems and was passed on to several of her children. When they married into other European royal families, the gene spread across the royal houses of Spain, Germany, and Russia. The most notable carrier was Tsarevich Alexei. Alex, one of Victoria's granddaughters, married Russian Emperor Nicholas II. Their son Alexei suffered from hemophilia, and the family sought help from the mystical healer Grigory Rasputin to save him. Rasputin's influence on the royal family led many aristocrats and commoners to view the Romanov dynasty as doomed. This discontent, which intensified revolutionary sentiments, became one of the factors leading to the fall of the Russian Empire. Thus, Queen Victoria's personal tragedy unexpectedly influenced the course of world history. Her marriage to Albert had a profound impact on Victoria, as he became her primary advisor. Victoria and Albert achieved their goal of creating a network of familial ties across Europe through the marriages of their 9 children and 42 grandchildren. Albert fell ill with typhoid fever and passed away on December 14, 1861, at the age of 42. Victoria was devastated and remained in mourning for the rest of her life. She wrote to her uncle Leopold, "My happy life is over. The world is gone for me." Victoria plunged into deep mourning that lasted until her death. She wore black mourning clothes to express her profound grief and devotion to her late husband. Her mourning influenced the association of black clothing with grief in fashion and society. Albert's death deeply affected Victoria, causing her to retreat from public life for a long time, which led to a decline in her popularity. In her state of deep depression, she changed physically, gaining noticeable weight, and appeared in public even less frequently. This sparked dissatisfaction among her subjects, with some even calling for the abolition of the monarchy. 2 people played a key role in her emotional recovery. John Brown, a Scottish servant who had previously served Albert, became an indispensable presence in Victoria's life due to his straightforwardness and loyalty. Brown was not just a servant, but also a close friend who supported Victoria during her darkest times. She often spent time at her Scottish estate, Balmoral, where Brown accompanied her on walks, discussed matters, and lifted her spirits. Their close relationship sparked numerous rumors, including speculation of a secret marriage, although no evidence supports this. The Queen referred to him as her beloved friend, and commemorated him after his death by commissioning portraits and statues in his honor. These relationships, though controversial within society and the royal court, helped Victoria cope with her loneliness. Later, in 1887, Victoria met a young Indian named Abdul Karim, who was introduced to her as a servant. He soon became her teacher and close friend. Karim taught the Queen Urdu and shared stories about Indian culture and traditions, which Victoria found fascinating. She even began exploring Indian cuisine and requested dishes prepared according to Karim's recipes. Victoria affectionately referred to him as Munshi, meaning teacher. These relationships also drew disapproval at court, as Karim came from a lower social class. Nevertheless, the Queen defended him and granted him privileges, including private quarters in her residences. She wrote him letters and even gifted him a piece of land in India. After Victoria's death in 1901, Karim was forced to leave the court, and efforts were made to erase his connection to the Queen from history. However, Victoria's correspondence and diaries confirm that Abdul Karim became a source of inspiration and comfort for her in the final years of her life. In the later years of her reign, Victoria focused on strengthening and expanding the British Empire. She remained on the throne for nearly 64 years, which at the time was the longest reign of any British monarch. While her era is associated with the flourishing of industry, technology, and the expansion of the British Empire, her life was also marked by tragedies and personal sorrow. Queen Victoria passed away on January 22, 1901, at the age of 81. After her death, her daughter, Princess Beatrice, edited and published the Queen's diaries, which covered decades of her reign and personal life. These records have become invaluable for understanding an era that shaped the history of Britain and the world. Thank you for being with us. Don't forget to subscribe to learn more fascinating stories.